Welcome to the Menopausal Women's Show for Nutrition, Health and Wellness. I'm Michelle, and as a nutrition and wellness coach, I work with menopausal women to transform their hormone health and well-being to achieve the life they want to achieve. On this podcast, I share research findings on hot topics, talk with other holistic healers, and share my own experiences to empower women to take steps to a better lifestyle. Now, over the next few weeks, super excited, okay? We've lined up a couple of experts to come and talk to us about how we can overcome our inner critic and challenges that we might face with body image. Yet this week, I am going to be absolutely raw with you and honest. It has been this week's topic, which is all about menopause and self-love and my true story and how to embrace this ride. It was extremely difficult for me to prepare this for you. But I really felt that self-love impacts us women, regardless of whether or not we're in menopause or not. Now, as you know, for those that know me, but if you're new to my podcast, welcome. My journey from childhood to now has been traumatic. I had an abusive childhood. Love and self-love was something I never even entertained because for me, surviving was quite a priority. Now, let's be honest, right? We're all guilty of putting off self-love as things get in the way. Okay, there's chores, there's kids, there's jobs to be done, there's a new Netflix, show to be watched. The list goes on. But if we don't, and take it from me, if we don't do self-love should be our priority, then our health, our happiness, our identity, success at being the best version of you, that is our main focus. If you don't do self-love, then you're impacting your health, your happiness, and your identity. So what can you accomplish by doing self-love? So let's really focus on this, and we'll get into depths about me sharing stories about what I did to embrace this. And really do pause, grab yourself a cup of tea, because this is a really sensitive subject. So what can we accomplish with just by doing some self-love? And let's start with number one, and let's begin with the most obvious but overlooked fact. Self-love is essential for your physical, your mental, and your emotional health. Now, I can already hear some of you going, what on earth has self-love got to do with physical health? Now, as I said, I'm going to be raw with you. Without self-love, it's easier to abuse our bodies by continuing unhealthy habits and self-destructive behaviors. And this exactly happened to me. I think it was around my early 20s. I was really at a low. I hated myself. My mother showed me no love. My father showed me no love. I had no boyfriend. I did not seem to be going anywhere. I was out partying every weekend. I was drinking way too much. I was really eating ultra processed foods, unhealthy foods. And when I look back now, and I'm sharing this experience with you, I suppose in some ways, just by drinking too much, eating too much, one, it comforted me for a while, but also at the back of my mind, I was thinking, God, I'll try and kill myself off or drown myself out from actually facing the reality. And by facing the reality, taking the action that I need. But by doing this, like self-destructive and uncaring habits, it just really then made me even more angry at myself. And I felt very ashamed. I mean, how could anybody love me when I was just like really not attractive at all? Putting on weight, gaining weight, skin wasn't great. So how could anybody want to love me? And then that really spiraled me into impacting my mental and emotional health. And so from doing that physical destructive behavior, I'd also would then talk to myself negatively and harshly, and then you just get more fear and anxiety and overwhelm, and like any self confidence or self-respect was just diminishing. In fact, it became non-existent to me. And fear is such an interesting thing when we look at it, because it's fear that keeps us from achieving our goals. Fear is great at convincing ourselves that what we say is true. And actually, self-love is the pathway out of negative self-talk, self-betrayal, and self-abandonment. And I can tell you, I have done all three of them. But what does like self-care really look like in this arena? You know, and for those that have listened to previous episodes, you will notice that there's lots of different things that will have numerous amounts of benefits. And the simple act of just eating healthy food and moving our bodies, and that could be taking a walk or a swim or doing a bit of yoga, drinking plenty of water. These are all the acts of self-care. And self-care really matters, because actually it's really cherishing our bodies to be able for our bodies to be alive and thrive. And what self-care really is actually discovering, and this is really important actually, is discovering what activities really light you up. And it doesn't have to be complicated. Ask yourself, just sit for 2 minutes and ask yourself, what activities make you feel calm and content and fulfilled? I know that, just yesterday, just watching my kids and spending some time with them and talking to them and, just being outside really, really lit me up. It really did. And that's important to me. Yes, I get up and I do my exercise. That's important to me. That's my self-care, because it gives me that headspace. But equally, just sometimes sitting in a cafe with me cappuccino, which is, my nice, small, healthy treat, and just taking the time to people watch or watching the environment, that also lights me up. So it's really, truly essential that we carve out at least 5 minutes a day to practice something that brings us joy, even if it's just taking a breath or doing a bit of colouring. But making your body, mind, and your heart really has to become a top priority. It's a win for you and everybody around us to keep thriving. And that really, really is important, because there is only you. And what else does self-love do? And this is where I go. This is number 2, and this is quite important. It establishes our identity. So this question was asked to me: who are you? And I don't mean the roles that you play. So for me, who are you? Right, well, I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a coach, I'm a podcaster, I'm an employee, and I'm an athlete. Yet somebody said to me, what do I do to relax and be without just myself? And it really stopped me in my tracks, because who am I? And I looked and I was like, well, I go to bed early and I yoga and journaling. And doesn't that cut it? Isn't that like self-care? And then I paused and I reflected, and actually it hit me then, because you go, without a strong personal identity, you lose sight of where do you start and your family and friends begin. So actually, where do you start exploring this? And some of the questions that were asked to me about who am I? So who am I? Not the roles, but who am I? So it's like, what do you like? Well, I like ice cream. I like being in nature. What don't you like? Broad beans. What's my thoughts on pineapple and pizza? Now that one's a very interesting debate. And actually, I don't mind it. I was asked, do I like to stay out or go home? And I was like, well, I like to have a mixture of both. And how do I communicate with others? And how do I want to be communicated to? And I was like, oh, okay. So I hope that I communicate to you as my listeners and to the people that I work with and the people I come into contact with, being very kind and respectful and honest. And actually, I like people to be kind, respectful, and honest when they're communicating to me. Sometimes I don't like the message, but that's part of our learning curve. So, how many of you have actually sat down and reflected on some of these aspects? But if you haven't, then get a pen and a bit of paper and just rewind, stop, pause, and take a look at those questions. So, what do you like? What don't you like? You know, what's your thought on a particular subject? Do you stay at home? Do you like going out? How do you like to be communicated? And it's these things that makes you clear on your boundaries. And I'm going to give you, like, I've shared sort of like an example that I like how I like to be communicated, but also I believe in acknowledging feelings and communicating with loved ones if those feelings are going to impact them. And I also want to respect other people's feelings, and views are extremely important to me. But equally, I don't tolerate unkindness and bullying. And I will share this recent example with you because it did happen this week. And I voiced my feelings and my boundaries in relation to a family unit and a request that came in. And I even offered a compromise to the request to say, okay, I'm not comfortable with that. And these are my feelings why I'm not comfortable with that. So I can't fulfill your request. But what I can do is here's a compromise. Now, I'm quite look for a compromise. I think it's because I'm part of a family unit, so you have to do a bit of give and take. And the receiver completely threw it aside and told me to get on with everything and stop being selfish, and that their request was important. Now, I've come very far on my journey. And years ago, at the start of my journey, I would have been very apologetic that I've upset them. And I would have backtracked and agreed to the request. Yet this time, my gut instinct said, no, I'm standing my ground. So yes, it has caused upset in my immediate family unit. But yeah, who I am and me has changed and will continue to change until I die. And that's another important thing that we have to consider, is that we're always changing. But I have my personal boundaries and I have my values, and I want to honor them, who I am, because at the core, it what makes me unique as a person. It what's made with other people that relate to me, that want me to help and support them on their journey. And equally, if I demonstrate strong boundaries now and the values and the identity, then I believe, rightly or wrongly, I'm starting to help shape and improve my relationship with my children now and years to come. Because I understand this whole concept may be hard for you to get your head around, especially if you spent so long living your life for other people. But it really is important, because you may be feeling worried about defining boundaries and any consequences that might come with it. And fear not, you are very, very strong. We're all strong and powerful, and we deserve this. So just pause and take a moment to think about those questions. What are your boundaries? What do you like? What don't you like? What are going to be consequences if people overstep those boundaries? Because quite simply, if you're defining your boundaries, you're also helping everybody else around you. They won't have to play a guessing game around you, trying to figure you out. Okay, you've got your identity, which is so critical to your future feeling of personal success. So you've got your identity. They don't have to play a guessing game. They know exactly what you like, how you want to be communicated, and then it grows in all your relationships because you can feel more connected. Now, I strongly hear some of you coming across saying this is just too hard. It's too hard to change now. I've been doing this for years. And, you know, this is what people expect of me. And I was like that, particularly with this situation. I've been doing this for years and, you know, I'm great at resolving situations. But certainly with the recent death of my mother in February, that was quite sudden. You just go, how long have I got left on the earth? Is it a day, a month? Is it years? I'm hoping, you know, at least to be 100. And we don't know when our last day is yet. What I do know is I want to leave a legacy of helping others, being strong, impactful, and living a life of joy and happiness. And this is essential to allow people to get to know you, set those boundaries and the consequences so you can identify who you are. So number 3, self-love also prevents anger or resentment from building, okay, which is why it's so important. And when we deprive ourselves of that self-love, we will allow anger and resentment to creep in. And it may not happen all the time, but I guarantee you it does happen. Now, we've all had challenges thrown at us and fear has crept in, and that has resulted in some negative behaviour, right? Like you losing patience, you've snapping at people. I clearly remember the day that the police arrived to tell me that my mother had died, and that sick fear feeling. And when the reality set in, I was like, how am I going to hold this together? How do I get through this? I have no idea what I'm doing. I cried, I shouted, I swore at Andrew and the kids and anybody that was giving me sympathy, because instead of caring for the people and being loving towards them from an authentic place, that when I say an authentic place, that I was filled up with love, my sense of duty and what I needed to do next really came from a place of resentment and anger, because the reality for me was, and the fear was, I'm the only one left to deal with this mess, and my caring turned into things rather I had to do than rather than thinking from a place of love for myself, love for my family. So just to let's flip it around, because I like to make it more relatable. Have you ever asked questions like, why is it always me that stays late at work? Why is it me that always, ferries the kids to where it needs to be? Why is it always me that I'm doing the cooking? So it's these why questions. Why is it always me? And the answer to all those whys comes down to our own choices and habits, because we all have a choice, even when it doesn't feel that way. So you are choosing to decide not to put yourself first, okay, and putting yourself last instead of prioritizing your own self-love and self-care. Now, you may be thinking you don't have time to practice self-love, but I will let you into a secret. It will actually free up more of your time. It will give you more energy, keep you healthy and resilient, help you focus on what matters most to you. When you love yourself, you will believe in yourself, and the possibilities are endless. So become more aware about your typical day and ask yourself, should this task be done, or do I have a choice? And most of us are not living out our values because we don't pay attention to our own needs and boundaries. So just becoming more aware of how you spend your day, you might be quite shocked to see that you have more choices available. Another way to look at it is, are you investing time where you would get the most value and what matters to you most? Could you ask for help? Could you bring in a cleaner? Could you let go of things that are not really serving you? Could you ask your husband or your partner to go and pick up the kids, or a friend? You've got kids are going to kids clubs. There's usually a lot of you that live near to each other. Ask somebody else to take it in turns. When you love yourself, it's easy to live by your values. And when you do, you'll discover that loving yourself helps you to love others authentically, because you have more time, you have more calm, more patience. So number 4, where self-love helps, it supports you to believe in yourself and your dreams. So when you love yourself, you're just not afraid to get to know yourself, then in turns allow you to believe in yourself. And that's a critical step in making any dream a reality. And yes, the concept is still hard for me to do, because believing in myself and self-love is a hard concept, because from my childhood, no one loved me. So I believe I hadn't got the right to be loved or show myself love. And equally, a lot of you might be listening to this and going, yeah, but my dream life is way out of reach. You're too flawed, or you're just, to be successful, you're just going to fail. But it goes back to what I said. We all have a choice. We can either believe in ourselves and honor who we create, who we are, and then we create our own success. And self-love is completely intertwined with our success. Self-love puts our own needs, dreams, and desires into focus, so we can begin our journey to living towards a soul-intended life. And if I did not prioritize myself and I didn't believe in myself, I would never launch this podcast or started coaching women to truly serve my purpose. And by serving my purpose, I am working towards creating the life that I want to lead. And whilst doing that, I'm very contented and joyful, which is creating more self-love, because I'm actually doing something I enjoy. And it's all about taking that one baby step, that one step on one day that you can do. So this has been quite intense. I'm sharing with you a lot of, the importance of why we should do self-care. And I'm going to give you 5 habits, okay, how you can start developing your own self-love. And by no means or feat, you're going to change overnight. So first of all, number 1, treat yourself with compassion. Now, I know it's hard. I really do know it's hard, because you have to really focus in on how you are talking to yourself. Catch yourself when you're talking to yourself unkindly or cussing yourself. How many of us drop something and you're like, oh my God, I was just so stupid. Would you speak to your friend like that? No. So really just say accidents happen, or, I'm doing the best I can. There's only me. I'm doing the best I can. Number 2, establish those clear boundaries and think about the consequences if people cross those boundaries, and stick to them. Stick to your values. Think about who you are. Maintain your own personal identity. Make sure you practice some sort of self-care, because there is only you. And if you're not in the right headspace, how can you be effective to anybody else, whether or not that's your best friend, whether or not it's your partner, whether or not it's your kids, whether or not it's your colleague? If you're not in a loving space for yourself, you will not be able to support others. So self-care is essential, because it provides you energy and focusing your focus headspace on you. So number 4 is notice when fear is running your life. And this is important. Stop and change how you communicate to yourself. You must make the conscious decision to say that if you ever want to love yourself in a real, authentic way, go, am I coming from a place of fear and reaction, rather than a place of calm and self-love? And number 5 tip is build the habits. Set yourself reminders, and trust me, I've told you, change does not happen overnight. It will take time, and you will digress, and you'll go back, and then you have to take notice of it. So set yourself reminders, track your progress. If you've taken up the journaling habit, at the end of the day, just make note at the end of the day, what's happened? Did you come from a place of fear, or did you come from a place of self-love? What's your progress like? What have you done towards self-love today? Because at the end of the day, it's the same with anything. You must take ownership of it and take that one baby step at a time, so you feel like you're not like trying to conquer the whole world, in order to achieve self-love, self-acceptance, self-success, personal identity, and better relationships. So my friends, if you'd like to chat with me about your unique menopause experience and get some advice, then please book a free, no obligation discovery call, and then we can come away with a clear plan of action to start your journey. Equally, go over to my website and sign up for an email. And finally, if you are hearing this message, then you've listened to the entire episode. And for that, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. I hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you did, please leave me a review. If you've got any questions, head over to YouTube channel where we can comment and we can respond. And also equally, share it with somebody else if you know it will be purposeful for them. So take care, and I will see you next week.